we've had 2.5 years of violence. Soldiers, insurgents, fear, freedom, and bombs. So many bombs. All this after 30 years of Saddam. As a doctor, I'm convinced that we are a nation on the verge of collective breakdown. And drugs have become our only way to ease the pain. Let me show you what happened to just one little Iraqi girl whose life got caught up in one of those big news stories. I'm going to show you what happened to her afterwards. Her name is Wala. She's the third child of the Abu Razak family. She's 12 years old. Her father invited me into the family home to hear his daughter's story. 1 year ago, Wala witnessed something terrible.
At about 9 a.m. our time, a car bomb detonated as an American military convoy passed through the Al-Amal district of Baghdad. Then 2 more bombs went off as people gathered to deal with the dead and injured. An ambush designed by the resistance to kill American soldiers, in fact, killed 41 Iraqi civilians, 34 of them were children.
Wala's best friend, called Ragda, was one of the children who died. Wala saw one of the suicide bombers explode himself outside her home.
He was very young, about 17 years old, I think. He was wearing sunglasses. I think his shirt was black. I saw that his hands were handcuffed to the steering wheel. I could see everything from here because I was standing on the chair. The Iraqi National Guards had stopped his car, but he was insisting on driving forwards. They started to beat him. He shouted, "You are beating me!" Then he exploded himself. The sky was dark. There was smoke everywhere. There were cars turned upside down.
Wala's arms were bleeding as she staggered through the house. Then, in the garden, she found a wounded man. One of his legs had been blown off by the explosion.
He raised his hand to me. I stepped back. There was blood everywhere. His eyeball was hanging out. His jumper was torn to pieces. There was blood all over his leg. His trousers were completely soaked with blood.
These are some of the photos their father took of his daughters in the hospital. He was hoping for some kind of compensation. He didn't get any. 1 year on, the physical wounds have healed, but the mental wounds are still there, especially for Wala. As a doctor, I know that Wala is presenting many of the classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder: insomnia, depression, and an increased tendency to isolate herself. She's received no psychiatric treatment. But how could she when the few medical resources we have in Iraq are focused on mending limbs and treating burns? Half of Iraq's psychiatrists have left the country since the war.
We know that PTSD is a sort of disorder which usually come after exposure to one trauma, one severe trauma. The new thing I found with my colleagues through many research and studies during the last 2.5 years. We found that the Iraqis are exposed to more than one trauma. I would call it multiple traumas. So multiple traumas create multiple symptoms.
The news from Iraq may be dominated by the new constitution, Saddam's trial and worsening security. But the news readers never mention the suffering going on inside thousands of Iraqi minds. The lack of any proper mental health program has resulted in an alarming new phenomenon: drugs. Thousands of Iraqis have started self-medicating on powerful mind-altering drugs, buying them over the counter from chemists.
You go and say, I want Valium, and everybody will give you Valium. You go and say Parkisol, and everybody will give you Parkisol. It's an open market of drugs now.
I went filming secretly in some of the best-known pharmacies in Baghdad. زحمة عليك تبتيزول أكو وأكو حبة بروزاك كبسولة هيدي أوكي تمام كم شريط بروزاك واحد؟ اثنين انطيني شو قد يعني يصيرون؟ كلين 2000 شكرا. Here I bought Prozac and Triptizol. It's another kind of antidepressant. Before the war, both these drugs would only have been available with a prescription. Triptizol can cause fatal cardiac arrhythmia. 10 pills are all that's needed to overdose. I bought 20. Another pharmacy, another drug. Parkinsol or Artane is normally prescribed for patients with Parkinson's disease. It's an anti-tremor pill. It's really popular in Iraq right now. I bought 20 pills for less than $2. Finally, some Valium. All of these pharmacists were happy to sell me a range of powerful drugs without a prescription or any guidelines. The only problem was that occasionally they had run out of stock. Most chemists would never admit publicly that they are selling these drugs over the counter to customers. In our lawless society, there are no regulators anymore. I did find one chemist who would talk to me, but only because he is leaving Iraq for good.
The new users are the educated and well-off class who know what they are doing and know what the drugs are made of and what it does. They ask specific questions about the drug and they keep coming back for the same drug. Some increase the dose and others start taking something new. You can tell by then they are addicts.
People like this woman, a 40-year-old mother of 4. She's become addicted to Valium over the past 3 months.
There's a pharmacy at the end of the street. I went to it and I told her that my nerves are bad. I can't sleep and I feel tired. She gave me Valium and she told me to take it. She told me to stop taking it after a while, but I can't sleep. My nerves are bad, so I keep taking them. And now I can't stop.
She's changed. She's changed wildly. She's become short-tempered. She isn't the Wallah I used to know. She wakes up in the middle of the night sometimes, speaking to herself.
I wanted to get a professional opinion on Wala''s condition, So we drive her through Baghdad to take her to the consulting rooms of one of Iraq's best-known psychiatrists.
It's very difficult for the Iraqi, for his dignity, to say, I'm depressed or I'm anxious or I'm fearful. That's why the children are screaming for help and treatment more than the adults who are trying to hide their symptoms until they become chronic.
Mental illness may be shameful, but the doctor's waiting room is always full of people. There is currently a 6-month waiting list to see him.
تخاف بالبيت طب لما تصير الدنيا ظلمة لهاي اي ما اتخيل بالبيت لان مشيت بيه اتخيل كل شيء اتخيل.
The session lasts 30 minutes. Walaa's mother gives me permission to film.
كلش يعني اي حتى البارحة يعني كلش البارحة بالقوة حتى بال4:30 بالليل قعدت وقتها ساعدت لها الماما. كنت قبل عادي عندي الانفجارات عادي حتى الامريكان لما هسه يفوتون اخاف من عندهم اخاف يفجروهم.
The doctor's diagnosis is delayed PTSD. He says that Walaa should ideally leave the country to live in a safe, tranquil place in order to recover. But that isn't possible. So he prescribes a short course of Prozac and 2 months of psychotherapy. The doctor won't be there to give it though. He too is leaving Iraq. And Walaa becomes yet one more Iraqi using drugs to heal her mental pain.